All right, guys, welcome back. We're here on this podcast. Shout out to everybody who's been on here. Haven't really posted in a bit, the story, but I'm just on here because if you're like me, you probably listen to a lot of podcasts in your spare time. And I do that, and I re-listen to some of the episodes that other people make that I find interesting, that maybe I find like, okay, there was like a tidbit in there that I had like a takeaway that, I got something out of that message. But sometimes I tend to listen to those over again because some reason, if it already resonated with me to some extent on some level, at least a portion of it anyways, I usually notice that, over time, there's more within that same podcast that often, I can come back to and I'll hear something that I never really paid attention to before, or find something I can apply more than before, or something that just went like way over my head that I just totally overlooked. And so, Pride Month is always upon us, right? I feel like it's kind of like some of us just kind of live for certain times of the year, and not only live for that, but you might really look forward to certain things. Pride Month is definitely one of those for myself. So June's coming up. Today's May 21st of 2021. We all know that 2020, most of the prides got canceled. This year it's kind of the same, at least live, but at least this year there's more open. So some cities might really cater to certain populations and maybe have something going on, even if it's not a full-on parade or a full-on like weekend or week-long of events. But we're also noticing that a lot of the major hubs, where you will see like the LGBT plus populations of people, or, the parts of the city that have the bars, the clubs, the restaurants, the businesses owned by such people, or who cater towards that population of people, they may not be open right now. And some are. And some are kind of changing the options that they have for people. So I'm kind of enjoying seeing that. I'm hoping that where people live, there hasn't been a lot that's been shut down, but there's a pretty much on Instagram, I follow these guys. They're called Face the Facts Show. And on Instagram, they have their YouTube channel linked, and on their YouTube channel link, they have only like maybe 3 videos posted. For those of you who haven't heard the other podcast recordings where I've talked about their site, it's a group of 4 masculine presenting LGBTQ plus individuals. I'm not sure if they all identify as female, but the 4 of them, and then sometimes they have a 5th person that I've seen come on. They were all on this show called SVT. It was on SVTV. It was like some kind of model show for like tomboys or masculine presenting females and things like that, kind of like pushing some boundaries. And they were talking a little about how they have some discomforts. And there's one person who, their name is AD, and online they go by AD Diggs on Instagram. Let me double check if it has like an underscore, because that's something I can never remember. AD underscore Diggs, which is spelled DIGGS. And so AD posted on one of their sorry, I'm really like tired and out of it today, guys. On one of their stories, a video where they're kind of interviewing each of the members of the podcast separately. And I gotta open this. Man, I always choose the worst spots to sit. The sun's like beating down on me. I thought this tree would provide some shade, and it's not. It's a nice breezy, windy day out, but I'm still sitting in this California sun. But yeah, I mostly was interested in, re-listening to this episode where they were talking about New Year's resolutions and kind of like the whole New Year, New Me kind of, energy that happens, and this was recorded at the beginning of 2021, but there was a part of that message that really resonated with me, which is something I kind of wanted to expand on a bit. And they were talking about, how do you address failures, or, when you have a goal in mind, because not everyone, but a lot of people set New Year's resolutions. And then a lot of people are like, I don't even set resolutions. I tried that before. It didn't work for me. And then this time of year, you see some people with the fitness goals coming back around because, it's almost summer, time to get that beach body, or, you're going to be outside more often and you want to feel comfortable in those clothes when you're not like bundled up in like sweaters and things. So people start getting a little bit more active so they can feel confident and just to improve their health in general. This time of year, people start realizing that again. And there was a part of the conversation at the end because AD talked to all three of the other members individually. So first talked with Kyle, I think, and then talked with Neon, and then the last person they talked with was London. And I think in that conversation, they were mentioning some things that kind of resonated with me. So something that they were talking about, not necessarily about New Year's resolutions, that's not what I want to talk about, but I want to kind of mention something that they were discussing, which I found very interesting and helpful, which was, when you have failures from your goals, no matter how big or small or major, when you have failures, what does that look like? And what do you do with those failures, right? So London was having a very like open comment about that, about how she experiences, like she was saying like mental abuse, like to herself. That's the wording she used. And I don't want to like take away from that and say like, no, it's not mental abuse. But I mean, that kind of resonated with me because I was like, yeah, I totally beat myself up like mentally about stuff that I don't do right. And I noticed myself even remembering stuff from the past, like remembering stuff from like ages ago, stuff that I even either find embarrassing or shameful or just like regret, or maybe there's some guilt involved, or just like, why did I do that? And a lot of times it's like social situation related stuff. But I was realizing that I was like, oh man, like that's, something that I could definitely improve on, and I'm trying, and, with it being Mental Health Awareness Month and stuff too, like I've been involved in mental health, like I work in the mental health field, and I've been involved in mental health, for my own self, because, those of us who work in that field, there's kind of this joke that goes around that's like, okay, you guys have all heard this joke, right? Like the people go into therapy, or go into the field to be a psychologist or a therapist because they have so many problems that they need to fix it themselves. I don't know. I mean, for some reason that always kind of like made me feel a little bit like maybe on the defensive, and it's kind of a judgmental comment, but it is something that you hear people say. And I think a lot of times people maybe say that because of the stigma about mental health. Like it's kind of like saying there's something wrong with therapists because they want to be therapists. They want to help people. They want, and it's like kind of like almost pushing people away from talking to therapists or counselors or healthcare providers, about problems, because it's almost like not acceptable in a lot of parts of the cultures, of many cultures around the world. And, with physical health, if you break your leg or something, nobody's going to be like, don't go to the doctor. Most people aren't going to say that. That's, not necessarily how most cultures work with physical health. It's usually the mental health, emotional health side of things where people will kind of say, hey, don't go talk about it, that it shows a weakness. There's like these ideas about like weaknesses and like that you just can't figure it out yourself and all that kind of stuff. But then when it comes to other areas of health, you would never tell somebody with like a problem with their diabetes symptoms or like arthritis or like a broken bone or something like, oh, don't go see your doctor. You need to learn to heal this on your own. I mean, I do believe that self-healing is a big thing that people can learn to do, but also it's like sometimes if you don't know how to do it, then it's good to seek information from people who are trained, right? And that's the thing. Like therapists necessarily aren't really just like full of themselves. At least the people I've worked with. I mean, I've had supervisors and had people that I've interacted with that I was like, whoa, like in a negative way. I was like, whoa, this is awful. Like I would never want to treat somebody like that, and they were like taking advantage of their power and their intelligence and their ability to get somebody in an emotionally vulnerable position, and they would kind of take advantage of that to kind of, I don't know, maybe boost themselves up or something. I mean, that does happen, but I would say, I don't know what percentage, but I would say overall that's not why people go into therapy, to like work in that field. But I was just saying that to mention that like it can be kind of challenging for people to try to get help, want to get help, start getting help because of these kind of messages. And there's even free help out there, very affordable help out there, that people might not even know about. And then people say, oh yeah, therapists get paid like $100 an hour. I don't get paid $100 an hour, I can tell you that much. But I have a lot of friends who might have doctorates and or are going the psychiatric route. They're doing pretty well. Like a lot of times it really just depends what part of the field you're in. But yeah, like that really kind of resonated with me, hearing AD in London talking about mental health, kind of the mental health side of things. They've been talking about that a lot more. And when they talked about failures, even if it's like a New Year's resolution or like an upcoming revamp your New Year's resolution and turn it to your summer resolution, or whatever it may be, goal setting, right? So that can be like career, that can be education, that can be just like projects you're working on, fitness things you're working on, health, nutrition. We all have goals usually that we intrinsically think, okay, this is something I want for myself for a certain reason. There's usually a reason we want that, right? And we usually think we'll feel better or seem better or look better or think better if we have those things. That's why we reach for those goals, reach to like completing those goals or getting to a point where it's no longer a struggle to kind of work on a routine or have something set in our routines. And that could be the goal in itself, is just to be consistent with something. Like if you're vegetarian, vegan, things like that. They were talking about that type of thing too. But, when it comes to, I would just say like personally, like for myself, I'll kind of break it down. Like when I do actually find myself, kind of having those moments where I'm like, why did you do this? Like, why did you do that? Even if it's not an immediate thing, I would notice this comes up for me more often about past things than things that have just happened. So say if I'm, for example, out with friends, having some drinks, I say some dumb comment and I noticed, I accidentally offended somebody, but I was like drunkenly just accidentally offending somebody, and I apologize, and then they accept the apology, and it's just like we were just having some laughs, and I maybe took it maybe a little bit too far, or like said something that was kind of unintentionally hurtful towards somebody, whatever the situation may be. I probably wouldn't really beat myself up about it the day of, but it would probably come up later on. And like, there's something about me that really, like, when it comes to social situations, I really don't like messing up. I don't like messing up with other people's emotions. I don't like messing up with my friends, with my family, with stuff I've done in the past, with, just comments I make, or just like when I'm totally not even like mindfully talking and just like trying to joke and be funny and just say some dumb thing. I try, to not get myself in a position where I'm kind of like in my ego and just talking out of my ass kind of thing, like I try not to be like lying to people and stretching the truth about things. I try not to gossip about things, and I try not to, talk bad about people or make like a negative situation or be like rude. But I notice whenever I do something like that, I really take it hard against myself, because that, that doesn't really align with who I authentically am, who I authentically want to be. It's kind of interesting too, because like this almost goes along the same lines, because when I was younger, I used to totally be in my ego, mostly because of how I was raised. I kind of felt like I had to have this like tough exterior, like kind of not a sensitive, emotional person, which naturally I am a very sensitive person, and naturally I value situations where there's vulnerability and just openness and just candid kind of conversations, and we're not just like talking about the weather and sports all day, but we're actually like talking about some genuine thing that's like on your mind, on your heart, something like that. I like talking like that with people, but I grew up in a religious community of people that's just not okay, and so I kind of learned that, when people say they want to pray about something, you don't really talk about what you actually want help with or prayer for. You talk about some other like surface level version of that, right? Or I learned, you don't really share your concerns or your sorry, I got a couple phone calls interrupting me from telemarketers. But yeah, I was saying, like, I grew up in a culture, the subculture of this church that was kind of really not interested in people, really being too genuine, because there was so much judgment around. And I kind of grew up in that kind of environment where it's like you can't really be open about your fears or your vulnerabilities or your mistakes and really talk about them with people in a way that you could actually trust them. And it was kind of interesting when I started talking more with people outside of the church. I think it was like in grad school when I started making a whole lot of different friends, and then in my work environments too afterwards. I started noticing, that there are a lot of people who aren't a part of that church, and the majority of the people that I meet don't even know about that denomination. And the people I was able to involve myself with were a lot more trustworthy. But I did kind of find too that I always kind of had this kind of internal desire or belief, or kind of not expectation, but kind of like I kind of had like an inclination towards being like not I don't know if I really like to throw the word shaman around, or healer and things like that, but like there was something about the field of like psychology and even like pastoral work, like being a pastor, missionary, things like that, because it was like, okay, it's the type of field where you would have people that could come to you with problems, and I would want to help people like with solving their problems, but in a healthy kind of environment, right? Especially because I knew what it was like to not have one, and I know what it does to somebody to not have that kind of trusting, open, loving environment. Not to say that I didn't have loving, trusting people around me, because I absolutely did and still do, and to this day I feel very lucky and blessed about these things. But just saying that when I was involved in those places, I didn't feel like there were people that were really like consistently dependable. Like if I tell certain best friends or close friends about certain things, I could almost guarantee that they were going to gossip about it, even though they didn't mean to. They just, people just didn't have a lot of, this was a different time. It was a different time. It was a different, like in the 90s and stuff, like people were different. Like consciously people were like at a different level. There wasn't like a level worldwide kind of people trying to be compassionate. Like there was, but it wasn't as it is today, with people like incorporating different helpful, healthy practices. Like we even see that health in all levels has really changed since like the 90s, and mental health and social relationships in addition. So one thing that I really noticed was well, not one, but in addition to these things that I've mentioned, something else I noticed was that I was not really taught how this looked. I just knew what it would feel like, and when I saw it, I was like, okay, this is how I want to be. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because when I started having, healthier relationships and being around healthier people, and I could be more like open and vulnerable about things, and like, I started realizing, I was like, I'm not, there was a part of me that was like, oh, like, I'm faking this. I'm faking, like, I'm trying to be this way, and I'm faking it. But I feel like I wasn't really faking it. When I look back, it's like I wasn't really faking it. It was just that there was this more like authentic version of myself that I was able to kind of be, and able to kind of represent, and able to bring out, because the environment felt safe and it was comfortable and it was healthy. Versus when I knew that I had to be defensive and in my ego and just protective of myself, because there were people around that just, they were just going to do what they wanted to do with whatever they could get from me. So I am pretty guarded, and I do play my cards pretty close, to my chest, but I also kind of wear my heart on my sleeve. So it's like this weird kind of combination of things where it's like, I can be like really open, but at the same time I can be really kind of like just in the background, closed. Like, I mean, I have close friends that have known me for like quite a few years that, some people, that still kind of, ask me like, do you have siblings? There's stuff like that it's like people should know that they just don't know, because I it's hard for me to be pretty open about stuff, because I have a background of, okay, when you open up about something, and I'm also a very private person on top of that, so it makes it even like double hard to be like open when it's like there's the background stuff. And then I think all of this leads to the way I kind of talk to myself. That's why I'm mentioning all this, is because it's like I feel like it all leads to, when I do fail in something, or when I do make a mistake in something, especially like those areas I was mentioning, when I feel like, this isn't my authentic self, this is my ego self, when I start making, those decisions. And I notice when I'm in that mindset, I'm usually not in a mindful place. I'm usually either maybe drinking, or, just kind of like not really in touch with myself and just totally just saying whatever, trying to be funny, wanting people to kind of like find me as more of like an interesting person to interact with and things like that. A lot of it is coming from like a place that's like totally based in like insecurities. I don't mind if people really think I'm dull or boring, but at the same time, it's kind of like, I feel like people almost think I'm too interesting sometimes, because I'm kind of maybe like a little eccentric, and I kind of do things in a weirder, different kind of way. And so when people learn about that, they're kind of like, oh, like that's different. And then I'm like, now I have to like explain all this stuff. But like I mentioned, it's like I'm a private person, so it's hard for me to then start like explaining things to people and talking to people about things that maybe I don't really feel like I want to share. So I guess the last piece that I kind of wanted to talk about was kind of how I kind of am, how that looks when I am kind of like by myself, and things are kind of feeling like maybe not too comfortable about my memories and thoughts about something that just occurred, or something I just did, or something I just remembered. I tend to not really be too kind to myself about those things. And like, it was good kind of hearing like AD's explanation about certain stuff, where it's like, there's certain stuff that, if it wasn't nurtured in you, it's not going to come natural, right? Compassion to myself wasn't necessarily nurtured in me. Or in a forgiving environment, if you have like a lot of kind of strictly religious people. I mean, it's one thing to be strictly religious and religious on your own, you know what I mean? Like, that is another thing that people kind of do, right? You can be religious and be religious for yourself. It's between you and, whatever spiritual entities or creators or God or whoever, is your higher power, or even if you have one, even if yourself is your higher power, whatever that looks like for yourself, you can be religious and have it not really impact anybody else but yourself, if it's going to be on the negative end. But it could still be very, very, very positive and uplifting if people are doing community service, helping people who are needy, helping people in the communities, even overseas or anywhere, just lending a hand, just helping and just being helpful and kind and giving and compassionate. All these things go a really long way. And a person can still be religious and not judgmental and doing all these things, or spiritual and not judgmental and doing all these things. Or someone can be religious or spiritual and use that either knowledge or their, understanding of what they feel like is truth, and kind of throw it in people's faces and be like, oh, like the Bible says this, or like my church teaches this, or my religion tells me that, my religion's better than your religion, and like we have the truth and you don't, and you're flawed on this, and then there can also be a lot of judgment for people who aren't keeping either commandments or different like rules and traditions, versus the people who just want to live their life and do that on their own. So I feel like I usually was kind of like interested in religion. I like the history, I like the background, but I always kind of wanted to know like why we do things the way we do, especially, if it's like you have a religion. The religion I grew up in kind of kept a lot of Jewish traditions, but technically isn't Jewish and didn't keep all of them. So I was kind of always wondering like, okay, there's like this Middle Eastern kind of background of things that we're kind of not really fully understanding. So I really dove like for multiple years in my youth into kind of like learning about the background about these details. And I kind of learned for myself what kind of works for me and what I kind of like and what I felt kind of pulled and drawn towards. And then the other stuff that I was just kind of like, this doesn't really seem like it really fits with what it seems to say. Maybe it was misinterpreted or, misunderstood. There's so much of that kind of thing that goes on with like religion. And I was kind of like, I like the parts of the religion that are about helping people and just being nice and learning how to get along. Like, that kind of stuff really resonated with me. Not so much like judge everybody for not keeping the same rules as you or not having the same beliefs and look down on them thinking that they're lesser, because that's kind of almost what I was taught, and that never really felt right. I remember meeting a friend when I was maybe in like 7th grade. Really good friend of mine, friend of the family. I'm not gonna mention the name, but like the family was a Muslim family from another country even, and they moved to the US, and the kids started going to school with us, and a lot of my friend group befriended this kid, and we're all kind of the same age, and like we all kind of became friends. And I remember being like deeply interested in this guy's religion. I was like, this religion was cool. I never really heard anything about it. I wanted to know like every and anything. And I remember he was mentioning having a Quran, and I remember borrowing it for like a night or two and then finding a version at the library, and I was like totally like, I've always been kind of able to geek out on stuff. And so I was totally just like into, wanting to like learn about his background, and like, especially because he was such a humble guy, very sensitive, humble young man, and still is to this day, as an adult male. And he's really cool. I never really saw him being judgmental or harsh with anybody. He would joke, and his jokes were funny. They were never at anybody's expense. He would kind of say funny little adorable things, and it was like, he would play sports. He was really athletic, but he wasn't like cocky. And he was probably one of the more egoless people that I had met at that age, where I was like, this is something that I can gravitate towards. I need to learn how he's this way. And so I started learning about the Bible, about the Quran, how it relates to the Bible, things like that. And I started just getting interested, because I was like, I see the way this guy is. I just want to know, like, what is it? And I remember how mad my friends got, like, that were not Muslim. They were part of this other Christian denomination. They were like, how can you even read that stuff? It's wrong. Like, what's wrong with you? Are you converting? And even to this day, I have some friends that like think that I've converted to some like strange, I don't know what they think, but like I kind of get that vibe, like when I talk to them, that they're just like, a friend made a comment to me the other day. He was just like I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but they made the comment of like, oh, like, because we come from like the Adventist background, and he was like, oh, like I don't care like who does or doesn't like believe in Adventism and all, like kind of like assuming that like I kind of don't have like any related beliefs, but it's like I do, but like I'm not, I believe that right now I'm not really like labeling too much of anything. I'm just saying, but I've taken things that I value, like the Sabbath. I think is valuable. It helps me balance out my week, so I'm not just running myself completely ragged. It helps me recenter, refocus, get kind of more rededicated to things that matter, especially in a spiritual way. And then everything that's connected to spirituality, which is like your thoughts, your emotions, your healthy eating habits, a lot of things in a daily routine, exercising, sleep patterns, stuff like that, social patterns, all of that I believe is connected to spirituality. That's just how I personally believe. But I've seen people get angry about this, where it's like, oh, like they don't want to like be or understand, the differences from others, and it comes from this like fear and judgment. And I kind of don't want to have that fear and judgment in my life, and I feel like I kind of apply that to myself, when I don't make, a decision that I feel like resonates with who I authentically am, who I feel like I authentically am, that egoless part of me, that I feel like that's the real me without all the like, without the shields up and things like that. This is the essence of who I am. And when I start going against that because of these ego things coming up and like insecurities and stuff, I start to look at, myself, judge myself about things. And, I don't know if there's fear there, but I think there might be, but I don't really know exactly what it is, but maybe there is. But it can get pretty bad. Like, it can really get to the point where I'm like losing sleep over a comment that I made, or, and there have been a few times where I'm like, okay, I've been able to kind of go back to a friend and be like, oh, like, I feel wrong about that, and it kind of helped. Like, there was a time once where, like, I don't know, there was this person that we knew, me and my friend group knew, and like, it turned out that she was kind of being maybe not so truthful, and we all kind of knew it, and she was trying to like build herself up. Like, she was kind of stretching the truth. So she was kind of saying like she lived in a certain neighborhood that was really like this really upper class kind of neighborhood, but she didn't. She lived kind of down the hill from there. And she was like, oh, my house and all this stuff, but it wasn't her house. It was another friend of ours. It was her family's house, and they rented out like like a separate kind of like entrance type of like studio type of situation, or one bedroom kind of thing, but it was attached to like that family's property and part of the actual house. So it wasn't her house. And just the things she would say would be like that to kind of make her seem like she was of a different, class, if you want to say that, like an upper class, but almost in a way that like was looking down on, because she was like also offensive to some of us. She was a little like rude and like not so kind and not so sensitive, and so it was kind of like easy to poke fun. And at that time I remember like having, this was ages ago, guys, when the DSM-4 TR was still like before the DSM-5. So I remember having like a small pocket version of the DSM-4 TR I got from a nursing buddy, and I was like looking through it, like working on some assignments and things. And I remember looking at it with some friends being like, oh, like, let's diagnose her. And these people were not even in the field of psychology. They, didn't know. And so I was like, I think she'd have this diagnosis and this one. And like, I remember looking in the book and being like, oh yeah, like, because I kind of knew like which direction. And I was just like, dude, that conversation went too deep in that direction for me. And I don't remember if I started it, but I feel like I did start it, because I was the one with the book and like just kept that conversation going. I felt like shit after that. I was like, dude, I should not have been making fun of her or, gossiping, even though she was saying these things right in front of our faces. But, I was part of one of the people that was like, oh, she's kind of lying about these things and like stretching the truth about this other stuff. And like, I don't know. Like, maybe I was just really insecure. I don't know what it was. Like, I honestly don't even know her. I've probably not even had, like, 6 conversations with her in my whole entire life. And maybe 4, maybe. There's, like, 3 or 4 conversations I can kind of remember. And it wasn't just me and her one-on-one. It was usually in a group setting. And I think there was maybe one comment she made towards me that I think, it's true. It's true. What she said to me, but it did kind of hurt my feelings, because she was like saying like there was a sermon that was about like different personality styles and like how some people are direct and some people are passive and different types of ways of communicating and things. And I remember making a comment to her, and then she was like, you're so direct, and like, that was the first time, now that I think of it, that's one of the first times that anybody's ever said that to me. And it was from that point that I heard that more. And so, not from that point, but like I heard other people say that to me. Like my mom said it towards me. There was somebody I had a crush on that said it towards me. There was another couple really close friends that said it towards me. So I'm like, yeah, there have been multiple people who know me really well that said that. And that's kind of how I try not to be. When I'm kind of like in my ego or not being mindful of the way I'm kind of like holding my energy and like expressing it, I get a little like agitated sounding, and like, I'm like completely disconnected from my emotions. You guys probably even notice it when you listen to me talking on these podcasts. I can sound really gentle and really compassionate, and then all of a sudden I'm like yelling, so like I don't even notice it oftentimes. Sometimes I'm doing it because I'm just in a rush. I'm sitting in this hot car and it's like I just want to get back in the house or whatever. Other times I do it because I'm like, not even aware. Most of the time when I do it, I'm not aware. I'm not aware of when my energy shifts from that lower, kind of calmer, more sensitive energy to this like more aggressive, agitated sounding kind of energy. I'm not like fully aware. So I'm working on that. I am working on that. And that is something that I also get kind of judgmental with myself about too, is when I kind of go like very too far in that direction, and it can go towards me really being so outwardly focused on everybody else, and I'm nowhere near focused on myself internally. I'm nowhere near focused on emotionally how I'm doing, how I'm feeling, what I'm being like, how my energy's coming across, how I'm expressing myself, my breathing rate, my heart rate. I'm just completely disconnected from these things. Easily I become that way. And I think I get that from my dad. He becomes that way easily. I feel like he's almost always that way. And it just really always bugged me. I'm just like, why can't this guy just like calm down? Like, just relax. Like, you don't have to be so like over the top aggressive and kind of forceful all the time. Like, it makes you really hard to talk to, that's what I was always thinking. Like, you're really hard to talk to for that reason. And sometimes I've even seen on people's faces, like, the expression, like, I was thinking about a friend who was, like, catching up with me. He was asking me about how's grad school, and this is after the time when it had, the whole thing had kind of flopped for me, so I didn't really want to talk about it, and it was kind of a sensitive topic, but, instead of, like, mentioning, like, oh, I don't really want to talk on that right now, I kind of was just like, I thought I told you about it already. I already explained it to you, kind of thing. But I said it kind of rude, and I can kind of notice in his eyes, just kind of like when people kind of widen their eyes or kind of make an expression that's like, oh, like that was a little much. And I did that before in a meeting too. I mean, there's like, these are things that I remember this kind of stuff. I remember when I noticed that I've been kind of like harsh in my tone and things like that, and I hate it. And it's probably because I grew up with a dad that was like totally that way. It's interesting because my mom was like never really that way with me or with any of us, but my dad like totally, like all the damn time. I was just like, dude, this dude, like, he was always that way. And it's hard to really take, especially if you're like me and you're like a really sensitive person. You're gonna take things personally very easily, and like, you can't really feel comfortable or open, trying to be open or honest about things. You always feel, at least for me, I always felt like, oh, I'm gonna get judged or like harshly spoken to and all this kind of thing. And I have some friends I can relate to on these things too. And, I try not to be a dick, but, it comes out of me, and I'm not perfect. I'm not, a lot of people say, oh, you're always so calm. No, I'm not. A lot of people say, I mean, like today I had like such high anxiety from almost the time I woke up. I had this dream about a close friend, one of the friends I mentioned while talking about some people in my life. I had a dream about this close friend of mine that he was choking on something. And I don't know if you guys have seen the scene in The Social Network with Jesse Eisenberg, where there's a scene where they're kind of like recruiting for Facebook. And then they play that, I think that song is by the Dead Kennedys called like Uber Alice or California Uber Alice, something like that. And they're playing that in the background, and there's like a room like in the basement, I guess, of some, OS lab or something like that, where they're just kind of, recruiting, having this like hackathon kind of like a little party thing where you have to take a shot if you do this right, or if you create a pop-up on someone else's screen, or like there's all these people that are hacking simultaneously trying to like do a certain task while they're kind of like trying to like interrupt the other people, and then you have to take a shot depending on what happens. And so you're kind of more and more under the influence as you're trying to do these tasks, and then the winner gets a place at Facebook as an employee or intern or whatever it may be. So that's that part of the movie. But like so anyways, the dream was almost in that kind of setting. I feel like it was almost like a restaurant that was almost like a casual kind of restaurant, almost like a Starbucks kind of feel with almost like a 7-Eleven vibe. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever been to Famimod. That's like the perfect cross between like a Starbucks and a 7-Eleven. It's like you can sit there. It's like a 7-Eleven with seats. Like, you can buy little things, heat them up, and then just like eat them there on the spot. And so it's kind of an environment like that where there were people kind of cheering me on as my friend was choking on some food, and I'm trying to give him like the Heimlich maneuver and then gonna go into CPR. And I remember like his body was like lifeless, and I was just like trying to hold him, and for some reason I could like hold him up from behind, and I'm like doing the chest, like, you know, that like the Heimlich, and then like everyone was kind of like counting along, like 1, 2, you know, like counting like in a cheering kind of way, kind of almost like in that part of the movie of Facebook not, it's called The Social Network, but it was almost like that, kind of like everyone was kind of cheering, but not really cheering particularly for me. Well, I think they were, but it was kind of like I'm trying to like revive this friend of mine, trying to revive this guy, and it wasn't really working. And then like it was just about to get into the part where you're doing like the chest compressions and then the mouth to mouth, like, and I had some other close friends that were there too, kind of like cheering for me, kind of like telling me what to do, guiding me, directing me, but kind of like cheering for me at the same time. And then that's when I woke up, and I was breathing so heavy, like so fast, like I was like hyperventilating kind of like, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I've never like, and this happened like this morning. So it's like, and if you guys know me really well, usually I don't sleep or fall back to sleep in the mornings, but I've been losing so much sleep lately that this particular day I did lose sleep. Or night I lost sleep, and it's been the third night now in a row that I've kind of lost sleep, to the point where I'm kind of like really lacking on sleep. I was almost falling asleep at my desk during some slow parts of work today, like it was that bad. But yeah, losing sleep, and yeah, I kind of just was noticing like, okay, like, then I woke up and I'm just like, oh man, like, so I kind of was like, okay, let me give myself about 15 minutes, let me log in, let me give myself about, 15 minutes to, get things going, leave some voicemails, while I kind of make some breakfast and get prepared for the day, and like, kind of like get to like working on my calendar, what's on my calendar. I'm like, man, I just could not get it together for the life of me. And it helped, having a meeting at like 9:00. It was just like a check-in with each other meeting. It wasn't like a serious thing. So that helped, kind of talking to some work friends. This was like an hour into work. But yeah, like around 2, I started feeling that energy dip again. And I was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, I had a hard day. There was a couple points in my day where I was like checking my heart rate and trying to like lower my heart rate, because I just felt like it was like, too high. Like I felt like, I wasn't having heart palpitations or anything, but it just felt that way. It felt like I was breathing too heavy. It felt like my heart was racing, but it really wasn't. But it's just, I say it's probably related to the anxiety that I get from not sleeping a lot, that I consume too much caffeine. So yeah, that's kind of what I noticed. But it was kind of an interesting way to start my morning, because I usually don't wake up from dreams in the morning. It was just the whole thing. So like today was just off for me in general. But yeah, I mostly was just pretty like I was listening to the podcast and stuff like during work, because it's kind of like something to like, there's a whole low stimulation aspect of this current job I'm in. So, it kind of gives me something in the background to kind of listen to that I find it uplifting and positive. And I'm like, well, if my brain's going to move slow and I'm going to be stressed and anxious anyways, I might as well at least have something in the background kind of boosting things up for me. And then when they kind of made that comment, I was like, yeah, like that's something I can resonate with. So for the longest time, I've been trying to like put all these pieces together. This is the best I can do at this point in time in my life of like explaining this, but for my own personal life, this is kind of the stuff I work on. And it takes me so much energy, you know, but I've never really talked about it. I mean, it does feel like a weight kind of lifted just to kind of just mention all this stuff, but like, you know, I don't really talk about it too much, because it's kind of like internal work that I do. But I do think it's important to kind of mention it. I kind of noticed how important it is to kind of mention stuff that's going on, because, you know, of my experience having something that I resonated with that kind of is something that is kind of getting the gears turning again, where I'm like thinking on it more. I'm probably going to spend more of this weekend working on this kind of thing, versus not working on it, you know, do some more deep diving into it. And so, yeah, I'm feeling good about that, and, you know, feeling like I want to really do that for the different communities of people that I'm kind of, you know, podcasting towards. And for, I mean, I hope that this helps somebody out there. This is just my process. I mean, everyone's is going to be slightly different, and I don't really have like the full method of how I'm doing this, but, you know, in the self-help writings that I've been working on, I'm really going to be trying to work towards writing on this, writing about this whole process, and trying to make some organized sense of it for myself so that I can actually articulate kind of the process by which I'm doing this. But it's broken. I feel like it's so broken into so many pieces, but I think this helps to kind of start from the beginning and talking, not like, you know, I'm not in the like blame your parents for how you are kind of thing, but looking at, you know, cultural background, upbringing, your own like private history of your own life. A lot of that shapes us, and the interesting part too is how it shapes us. And especially since our brains are still forming, our bodies are still forming, developing, we're not, like they say, we're not fully cooked yet, right? So it's like we still have ingredients being added, and we haven't become that fully cooked dish yet. We're still in the works of cooking. Things are still being cooked. And so as these different ingredients, whether positive or negative, are being added from different areas and aspects of our lives, we're kind of like creating this main dish with it, which is ourselves. Hopefully the main dish is going to come out as very limited, to no high levels of ego coming out that are detrimental to other people. And if we are using our ego, hopefully it's only to help us become better, better than we were ourselves before, to kind of remind us of the changes we're making and kind of guide us and just get us back on track with a little bit of a helpful nudge. Sometimes we kind of need that, like they say, that little kick in the butt. It's kind of like when you're doing something, your coach kind of like, or your personal trainer kind of like doesn't like yell at you, but they're kind of like talk firmly to you just to kind of get you out of that part of your head that's like, this hurts, or out of that part of your head that's like, this is not just that something hurts, but that this is you know, you're almost there, you know, like just keep pushing. But, you know, in our own minds, we're saying like, oh, this hurts, or oh, this is uncomfortable, or oh, I'm out of breath, oh, I need to stop. Versus a coach, they can just tell you firmly that you got this, or that, you know, keep going, or like, don't give up, or whatever they're saying, can just help you just get in that many more reps and just push that much a little further. Just kind of like, sometimes we do need the ego to do that to us, to just be like, dude, remember how that felt when you messed this up last time? You need to just kind of get it under control, you know, instead of taking that outside and, you know, using that against other people. So I don't know how to explain all this, but this is kind of my throwing out a bag of marbles kind of method of explaining all these things. But I would say that's one method, one explanation, but I feel like there's a method of how to do this. Maybe. I just need to kind of organize. I mean, I could organize my method, but I never really have. So, I've kind of been making this up as I go over the course of like years. And I'm kind of noticing, okay, certain things are really working. It's slow. Heck, it's slow. It's not fast at all. But I mean, it's a slow process. But I am kind of noticing that, I'm at least, if I'm not getting better at the actions, I'm getting better at least kind of noticing, even if it's after the fact, kind of the things that I'm trying to change. So, that's kind of all I have to really say about, well, it's not all I have to say, but I'm getting hungry and it's hot and I'm getting tired. I'm trying to beat this rush hour traffic, and it's 5:18 p.m. on a Friday, so I'm gonna jump in, get some of my dinner pieces, and get back to my place and keep working. I'm gonna keep working on this stuff during this I don't mean the word Sabbath to be like a triggering word for people, but that's kind of what I'm gonna spend those periods of my time working on. And as usual, thanks for listening.